Hola a todos, ¿cómo están? Soy Ingrid Brigiler, bienvenidos a mi canal. Si es tu primera vez por acá, te cuento que soy médica ginecóloga, emprendedora y fundadora de varias empresas. Estoy intentando llegar a los 1000 suscriptores a este canal de YouTube, así que dale click al botón de suscribirse y arranquemos con el video. La semana pasada entrevistamos a Kat Mañalac de YC. Si sos emprendedor, seguramente sabés quién es y qué es YC, pero voy a hacer una breve intro porque es importante que conozcan un poquito más. YC es una de las aceleradoras más importantes del mundo. Todos los emprendedores quieren pasar por ahí porque el proceso de aceleración es súper interesante. Hay una comunidad de emprendedores muy colaborativa alrededor de todo el mundo y de ahí salieron algunas de las empresas más importantes de hoy en día, como por ejemplo Airbnb o Dropbox. YC está buscando más emprendedoras mujeres. Entonces salieron a hacer un comunicado por todos lados de que las founders que ya habían participado y que ya habían participado de YC salgan a convocar a otras emprendedoras mujeres. Hubo un día que se llenó de tweets, todo Twitter sobre este tema de que YC estaba buscando más emprendedoras mujeres y yo lidero una call mensual de emprendedoras mujeres. Si sos emprendedora y sos mujer y te querés sumar, siempre y cuando trabajes en el área de la tecnología, me escribís o me dejas un comentario acá y te sumo a esta call mensual. Hacemos una call mensual donde nos juntamos a hablar de diferentes temas, los desafíos que tenemos por delante. Invitamos a veces a emprendedoras que ya hayan levantado miles y millones de dólares. Invitamos inversores que nos den algunos truquitos para ver cómo nos tenemos que preparar y cómo nos tenemos que sentar frente a inversores. Y se nos ocurrió invitar a Kat Mañalac para que nos cuente cómo es que tenemos que aplicar, por qué ella considera que es importante que haya más emprendedoras mujeres y por qué YC está mirando y poniendo el foco en la diversidad, y eso incluye tener más mujeres founders en sus batches. Así que acá los dejo con la entrevista, espero que la disfruten, déjenme sus comentarios si les sirvió, si no les sirvió y si quieren ver más de este tipo de entrevistas. Nosotros una vez al mes hacemos esta call, la call dura 1 hora 45 minutos, entonces son videos largos, pero ustedes me tienen que decir si es contenido que les interesa, así que espero que le dejen la manito para arriba en los comentarios y no se olviden de suscribirse, lleguen al final porque en el último minuto nos da un truquito súper importante para aplicar a YC, que sirve tanto para emprendedoras mujeres como para emprendedores de todos los géneros. Así que muchas gracias por estar del otro lado, los dejo con Kat Mañalac y nos vemos en los comentarios.
Hello, it's good seeing some familiar faces. Hi, Cecilia. Hi, Liza.
Hi. We were just talking about Y Combinator and about yourself. So please introduce yourself to the group, please.
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Kat Mañalac. I am the head of outreach at Y Combinator. I've been at YC for almost 9 years, and I've seen about 3,000 companies go through the program now. YC, are you guys all familiar with YC?
And yes, of course. Let me introduce ourselves. I am Ingrid Brigiler. I am the organizer of these meetings. We are a group of 300 female entrepreneurs from Latin America. And every month we meet here for 1 hour to talk and discuss our challenges and our next steps in our companies. Lately, we have invited some VCs to come here to give us some advice about raising capital, about all our challenges. And me, I am a founder. We are all founders, and I have 2 companies. One of those have $3 million of revenue. All together, we have $150 million in raising capital. All together, we all together, and this is why we want to invite you to talk each other. And of course, we are familiar with YC. All the founders want to be part of YC. And well, you can tell us a little bit more about the application, but I would like to start this interview or this meeting asking you why are you interested in find more female founders and to add these female founders in the next batch?
Okay, so I think why do I want to find more women founders, more female founders? I've been at YC for 9 years now, and for 5 or 6 years we've run something called the Female Founders Conference. Now we call it the Aspiring Founders Forum. But I've had the sort of honor of leading sort of a community of women within YC, and also externally through this conference. And it's and one thing is, like, I think generally not enough women are getting venture funding, right? If you look at the percentages, it's only like, I think it's something like 4% of venture funding is going to women at all stages. And at YC itself, we have it depends on the batch. For example, I think the most companies in one batch we had with a female founder was 27% of the companies had a woman founder. But that means that, in that batch, I think it was only something like 15% of the founders in the batch were women. And that's the best it's ever been. And so I certainly see that there are a lot of incredibly talented women who are starting companies. And I want to make sure they know YC is an option, and they know that we're a great partner to build a company with. And I hope one day to see 50% of the companies at YC have women founders, and 50% of the founders at YC be women. And I know it's going to take a while to get there, but I think I'm so pleased to see a community like yours, because I think having peer support in building your companies is incredibly important. That's one thing we definitely believe in at Y Combinator. And so I'm so happy to see there's 300 of you, getting together on a regular basis to, talk about your challenges. So yes, I think not enough women are getting funded. I think, honestly, I would love to see even more women consider starting companies than there are. I think seeing more women get hired at early stage startups is one way to increase the pipeline longer term. So that's something that we're also focused on, getting more women engineers to join companies. So that's sort of, it's a passion of mine, and something that everyone at YC cares about. And so anything that we can do to help women founders, even broadly, even in the community outside of YC, we're happy to try doing.
Great. It's very inspiring what are you saying. And here you have a huge pipeline for your next batch. So tell us a little bit more about the application. What do you look for, and when you see the application, what advice you can give us to apply?
Yeah, and if the alum want to jump in at any time to talk about their experience with the application process or interviews, please do. We have 2 applications a year, one for the winter batch, one for the summer batch. The deadline for the summer batch just passed, but we do take late applications up until basically the start of the batch, so early June. So you still have time if you're still thinking about it. And then we essentially, in the application, we're really looking at the team, especially in very early stage companies. Like 60% of the companies we fund don't yet have a launched product. So they might have a prototype, or, if you're a biotech company, they might be years from, public availability. Exactly. So in those cases, we're looking at team. Like, does this team have the technical ability to build what it is they're pitching us? If that's a software company, hopefully you have a founder on the team that can build software. If it's a hardware company, the ideal scenario is that you have a mechanical engineer or a hardware person. Or if you're a bio company, ideally you'll have someone with that domain expertise. So we look at, does the team have the right experience, or to build the company? Are they? Can they be if you look back at all of our, top companies, a lot of the companies we funded, their applications are really well written. They can clearly describe what they do in very simple terms that anyone can understand, even people who are not in your industry. So even the very deeply technical companies or the deeply scientific companies, they're able to talk about what they're building and who they're building it for. And then we look at, is this a team that has a good dynamic? Do the founders know each other well? Do we believe that they'll stick together as a team? Do the founders have close to equal equity? We like to see, we want to believe that this team will be together for, a decade building out this company. And so hopefully everyone has as close to equal equity as possible. We look at the why, like why is this team working on this problem? And do we believe that they're going to devote the next decade of their life to really solving this problem? And then, if you have a launched product, for all companies, we also look at how quickly you can move. So if you've only been working on this for 2 months, but you have a prototype, you've talked to a lot of potential customers, like we love that. If you've been working on something, and this is for, software companies, we know that biotech and hard tech have a longer timeline. Yeah, you're nodding. But for software companies, if you've been working on it for like a year and a half and you only have a prototype, we wonder, what is slowing you down? Like how, we look at the speed at which you are working, also in comparison to other companies in your space. And we're open to any vertical, We love to see teams because we know it's so hard building a company alone. And we've funded many solo founders. And so if you're a solo founder, I wouldn't let that stop you from applying. But we've just seen it be easier. You have a greater chance of success if you have multiple founders on a team. So 2 to 3 founders really working closely together. That is what we're really looking at in the application process. And if you have a launched product, we're of course looking at other metrics like, how, quickly you're growing, your cost of user acquisition, your COGS, like whatever the metrics are that you're tracking, we ask about during interviews. And then we get these days like 15,000 plus applications per batch. We interview 2,000, or so companies per batch. And then these days we're funding about 400 or so companies. And so that's sort of what the sort of pipeline looks like. If the founders want to jump in and talk at all about what they remember about the application and interview experience.
We will talk with them later. Also, we talk each other, and Liza, for example, helped us a lot with the applications because she's always telling us some advice. So now we want to focus on you because you have little time to ask. For example, Angela is asking, or Regina, I don't remember, but what are you look in the videos, or how important is the videos, and if the founders have to be all together in the same place, or it could be by Zoom, for example. What do you prefer, or what is better?
These days, it's totally fine if you're not in the same place, and so you can record it on Zoom. You can record it. Ideally, you are in the video together. So if you are applying with 2 other founders, we want to see all the founders in the video, but you don't have to be in the same room. I think prior to the pandemic, we preferred everyone to be in the same room recording the video, but we know that's not always possible these days. So totally fine to record on Zoom. And what we're looking for is just a really short introduction of who you are and what the company does in 1 minute or less. And so it's just name, title, short description of your company, and maybe a little bit more about the problem you're solving and why you're solving it. And then if you have any really impressive, milestones that you've hit, or, things that make your team stand out, I would definitely include that in the video too. The video is, just a way for us to hear in your voice a little bit more about, what you're building. So it's I wouldn't stress over it. You definitely don't need high production value or music or anything. It's just a casual introduction to you and the team.
Great. After I want to make this interview in 2 parts. one part about the application and all that, and another part about the business itself. What do you recommend us for the business? But finish with the applications. Let's say that we apply, we put that you are our referral for the application, and we pass to the interview step. It's only 10 minutes of interview. It's very difficult to answer quickly and correct, and it's difficult to you, I guess, to understand or to feel the feedback you need to then say yes or no. So what do you consider in these 10 minutes? What do we should focus on? For example, team, units economics, traction. What do you recommend us for 10 minutes, for these 10 minutes?
I would know all of your numbers cold. So, as you said, unit economics, what is the cost of acquisition? How are you finding customers? Any numbers associated with what you're doing. And it depends on the type of business you are. I would know them cold. So I would practice. There are a lot of places online where you can find like all the questions that people have asked at YC interviews, and you just know any of the numbers related ones, just know them, know them hard. Then I would say, I would talk about insights, right? So what is the problem, and why are you focused on solving it? And then based on your interactions with potential customers or actual customers, if you have a launched product, what are things that you've learned that other people might not know? Because, for example, when we're reading, each of us reads maybe 1,000 applications per batch, and we see a lot of teams that are trying to solve the same problem. So often we'll interview, there's one year when I interviewed five founder, teams that were trying to build like an Uber for babysitters, right? Or a caregiving platform. And so we had to figure out, like, what does this one team know that this other team doesn't know? And like, why are they approaching things, how are they approaching things differently? And often the best way to figure out these new insights is sharing insights that you've learned working with customers, or if you're solving a problem that you experienced yourself, like what insights do you have that make you the right team to tackle this problem? So I think, and then it's, one thing is that we don't always disagree with your hypothesis for the company or with the way that you are, that you've decided to tackle this problem. But sometimes the interviewers, we will try to poke holes in your current model and in your current thinking. And it doesn't mean we, philosophically disagree with you, but we want to see how you respond to getting sort of questioning in this way, and like are they flexible in their thinking? Are they really dead set on solving the problem in this way? And why are they? If they're really confident that this is the direction to go in, then why? And so I would have that sort of some founders would get offended. They get upset if it sounds like the interviewer is disagreeing with the premise of your company. But that's not necessarily just because you're getting asked those questions doesn't mean we disagree with you or think you're wrong. We just want to see how you think about it and why you're confident about the direction you're going in.
This is very important because when investors make us questions, we think that they want a specific answer, and you are telling us that we have to be confident about our hypothesis and about our experience. And this is something that here we discuss a lot, maybe the lack of confidence of women when we pitch to investors or when we are raising money. But we have, of course, a lot of more questions, but this we talk about how to get into YC. But I think we don't have to work for that. We have to work for have a wealthy company. So what do you recommend us to have this great company that you would like to invest? Or what do you need to focus on? What do you need to look at the beginning? Tell us something about that, please.
Yes. other than the team, what we're looking for is, so we're looking for speed, like how quickly can this team execute on their vision, or at least parts of it? Like what is, and so we look at YC during the program, we say you should really only be doing two things, which is one, building the product and talking to users. So we're looking really carefully at like how quickly can this team build the product, how quickly can they, get things in front of potential customers, and make changes to their product based on the feedback that they're hearing from customers. And so I would say, really leaning into, so early stage companies will sometimes say, oh, I talked to 50 customers. And we're like, you should add a 0 to the end of whatever number it is you talk, and talk to 500 customers and really get a better sense for how to solve their hair on fire problem. And then for stuff like, if you're pitching investors and you want to just show that there is, during YC, for example, we always sit with the companies and make a demo day goal. So the goal is, for software companies, it's often like, how do we help you grow 7 to 10% week over week? And for bio companies or hard tech companies, we figure out what is an ambitious but achievable goal that you can set for yourself for 3 months in the future. And sometimes, that's LOI. So that's talking to potential customers and getting them to, sign a letter of intent saying, as soon as this product is available in the world, we will buy it, to show investors that, yes, this team can both build the product and they can sell it, even though it's not in the market right now. And so it's trying to figure out like, what are those, small ways that you can make that point. But yes, I would say for us, it's just, we want to see you, doing the two core things, which are, building the product as, fast as possible and really taking in that user feedback. And so that's the types of companies, and we want to see teams and founders that will continue to build the product and be passionate about solving the problem, even without us or investors. And so, hopefully you're all working on things that you really feel dedicated to, and that you can communicate that in, both how quickly you're moving and in talking about the why, why you're solving the problem you're solving.
Great, thank you. And Regina is asking, what happened, for example, with companies that have more than 2 years or have more than 2 years of operations, but they need the next steps in speed or in acceleration? Do you consider this kind of companies, although maybe they don't have a speed before?
Yeah, I think we have funded companies that have been around for a little while and that are, and I think the big, and maybe we've even funded companies who have millions in revenue. And so it's less about, that I think what it is like, if you've been around for a while, but weren't, growing very quickly or moving really quickly, the question will be like, why now? Like, why are you interested in applying to YC now? Or are you at an inflection point where you've decided like, okay, we're going to do things a little bit differently and, aim to grow at the speed, at startup speed. And so, yes, we do accept, companies that have been around for a while, but we want to understand like, why is this the time? And what is sort of changed in your model or in the way that you're thinking to make it sort of a venture backable business, I guess.
Great, very interesting, because we have here a lot of companies of 2 years of operations. Well, if anyone has more questions, of course, I write it down. I would like to ask you about the personality of the founders, and especially female founders, or if there is no difference between male founders and female founders. But what do you like to see in the personality of the founders? What do you think is good to have, nice to have?
I think a great skill is, and this, I think we've funded so many different types of people, so it's hard to really say that there's like one core personality that it will be successful as a founder or at NYC, because it's a really wide range. Like there's introverts and extroverts, and you can be a successful founder no matter what you are, and there are certain skills you'll probably just have to practice. And one thing I think that is a great skill for founders is the ability to recruit. That's going to be, after fundraising, that is the biggest challenge that most founders have for the lifetime of their company, is recruiting top talent and inspire. So that it's a mix of being able to clearly explain the problem that you're solving and who you're solving it for, and inspiring people and explaining to people, not just investors, but potential customers and potential employees, like why should they join this journey with you? And so I think it's like being able to clearly and succinctly describe what you're doing, the problem, and to kind of sell people on a little bit of the vision, right? Of like, why should you join this company for the next 4 years, right? And so I think that there is like that ability to communicate is an important one. The ability to take a lot of feedback, and because you're nonstop getting feedback, not only from customers but from investors, and like, are you able to kind of absorb all that feedback and like move forward confidently with your own decision? I think that's important. Like at YC, we say like, we're not your co-founders. Like we're minority of investors. Like we can't make decisions for you. So you have to be able to confidently move, in your own direction. And I think it's like founders are just optimistic people, right? You guys are all you guys are also, you believe that you can make change in the world. And I think you have to be a little bit crazy and to be a founder, to have that belief in yourself, and that you can, and that's an important trait. So I think a lot of, other than the hard skills of like building or domain expertise, having that ability, I think, to recruit is a huge one, I think, over time, that we've seen some of our best founders have.
Right. I think we have it all. We have it all, the checkpoints here in this room. So we are very excited. Laura is asking, is sustainability or triple impact could be more important than growth or speed for you to decide one new company to be in your batch?
Yes, we have started to see a lot of like climate, especially like stuff in climate tech, right? A lot of really smart founders are starting to think about sustainability in their companies and to build, climate and sustainability focused companies. And that is something that we're very interested in. Like we funded more of those types of companies in the last batch than possibly all the batches in the past combined. And so I do still think that even among companies that have that, are very mission based, or, sustainability, or, it's, speed is still important, because there's still a lot, you're still competing against, whole, global marketplace of companies. And so, I don't think that's mutually exclusive, but yes, we do love founders who are working in like the sustainability or like mission-based type companies.
And another question related to that: does YC have any objective of on impact businesses they invest? Do you want some metrics of these impact businesses or not?
YC does fund we fund nonprofits, and what might be defined as like businesses, impact focused businesses. For the nonprofits, we still like to fund things that have the ability to scale like a startup and impact potentially millions of people in positive ways. And so we're still looking at kind of the same things. We're looking at the team in the same way. We're looking at speed. Like we're looking at how much impact are you able to make on like as little, money as possible, which is sort of like looking at like, the cost of impact, right? So I think we think about things differently when we're working with, nonprofits or but it's not so different. I actually think like for the nonprofits we work with, the main difference we have is helping them fundraise in a different way versus actually following different metrics or a different philosophy.
Right, very interesting. And I always believe that you can help more with more money and with biggest metrics. And Dani is asking what is better for you, a high user growth rate based on a free offer pilot or a small scale pilot with a high profitability.
Okay, so high user growth with a free pilot or a small scale pilot with high profitability that is scalable. I think it's probably, it really depends on what your business is, but I would say it's the pilot where people are actually paying, because I think the most telling thing is like, are people willing to pay for the product that you've built? And so we want to see, if you have 1,000 people, but they're not paying anything, that says something about what you've built. But there's also another thing we look at is engagement. So it is great, if folks are willing to pay, actually pay money for what you're building. But also we look at like, how often are your customers engaging with the product? Like, what does your churn look like? So if you say you do a high user growth free pilot, but nobody is, you have no daily active users, no weekly active users, like that's a negative signal. So it depends on what you're building, but I would say the ideal thing is like, are people willing to pay for what you've built? And how engaged are the people who are signed up for your product?
Right. Are you investing in Web3?
Oh yeah, we have a lot of, so at YC, just in terms of the general philosophy, we try not to predict what's going to be the next big idea, because we know founders, especially in the early stages, they often pivot or change their idea, or they'll take a different approach to the same problem. And so what we really focus on like the team and the founders, and we found that like really smart teams and founders will figure something out. And it just so happens that I think in the, especially in the last batch, we've seen a lot of really strong teams start to like apply with Web3 and crypto companies. YC funded Coinbase back in, I think it was summer 2012. And so throughout the years, we've started to see a slow trickle of people applying with crypto, blockchain, and then now it's sort of Web3. And so we have a good community of Web3 founders within YC at this point. But yeah, it's something I think a lot of really smart people have started to focus their energy on.
Right. And what are the main reasons for declining a startup?
There are, there's never probably one reason. I would say like it's probably a lot of, yellow or red flags that we see, and it adds up to, us deciding that maybe now is not the right time. I will say that if you have applied to YC before and didn't get in, I wouldn't let that stop you from reapplying, because about 50% of the companies we fund have applied more than once. And we ask a question on the application that says, if you've applied before, what has changed? And so we really dig into that question. And if we see that you've moved really quickly and, accomplished a lot in that, 6 months since you last applied, then you have an even higher likelihood of getting to interview stage or getting into YC. But yeah, so I would say that some of the red flags, I guess, we look at are team related. So does the team seem like they're not going to stick together? Is there a worrying equity split? Do we see, like, I guess, are they moving, really slowly, or seem really nervous about potentially charging? Like, say they have a launched product and it's been out for a while, but they haven't charged their customers and it's been forever. And we're like, what is stopping them from like making that one step, forward? So I think there's a lot of different potential reasons, but probably not one that's any like deal breaker. It's like a combination of a bunch of small things.
Great. I don't know if you have 10 more minutes.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Yeah. Well, after the batch or after this question, I would like to ask what happened during the batch? You have 400 startups working all together. How is the networking there? How is you helping them focus on the industry? How do you manage 400 startups?
Yes, so we're sort of like, someone has, a bunch of people have called us Hogwarts for startups. So there's 4 groups, or it's like 4 houses. And so each group has about 100 startups. And each group has 3 partners that are dedicated to working very closely with you. So during the program, you get to know the people in your group and your group partners really well. And then you have the other resources of YC, you can reach out. But it's during the batch, what happens is we do a kickoff now at the beginning of YC, and it's usually a 3-day kickoff where it's sort of like a boot camp. So it has a lot of different topics that are covered around growth or sales or, press, we have all the sort of topics like sort of covered up front. And then on an ongoing basis, there are office hours and you can do, I think on average, founders do office hours, once a week or once every 2 weeks, one-on-one with their group partner. And then every 2 weeks, you do group office hours with a group of 7 or 10 other companies. And it's sort of set up like this, they meet and they talk about what are your biggest challenges? What have you accomplished in the past 2 weeks? What do you hope to accomplish in the next 2 weeks? And what are the biggest challenges? And like, how do we help each other through that particular challenge? There's also some of the groups like will talk about themes. Like every week they'll have a different theme that they dig into. Maybe it's about user acquisition or, depending on the group. So the groups now are kind of set up so that you're in smaller groups with companies in your same vertical. So you can learn from each other when it comes to, customer acquisition or SEO, whatever the challenges are. And then you're often in groups with people from your region as well. So if you're building a company in Latin America or building a company in India, you're often with those other teams from your area, and that kind of helps if you have region-specific challenges. So that's sort of how for the most part, YC founders just code and talk to users, and they build product and talk to users for the majority of the batch. And then about 2 weeks before demo day, we switch into fundraising mode. And that's when we really sit with the founders and help them figure out, what does your demo day presentation look like? And we'll do something that we call internally vertebrae office hours. So you only have these days, since we're now everything, demo day is remote, it's online. And so you only have 1 minute to describe what it is you're building, who you're building it for, the team, and then major milestones that you've hit, or like why investors should be excited about your product. Founders will practice that, and on demo day they present it in front of, usually it's about 1,500 investors from around the world will tune in, and then after the batch, we can talk about after batch later, but directly after the batch, a lot of the group partners will help answer fundraising questions. Like, are these normal terms? Like, is this investor asking me, to sign? Are these strange terms? Like, we've seen it all. We've seen like the good and the bad and the ugly. And so, it's good for founders to ask us, because we've seen, thousands of companies at this point raise money, and we can tell people if we think these are like unfair terms or strange terms, or what's been great about the batch during the batch is like a lot of companies will end up getting their first 100. If you're a B2B company and you sell to startups, you can easily get 100 customers from the YC network, and sometimes from your own batch, now that the batches are larger. And so there's a lot of that happening, and then toward the end of the batch, I think what's great is a lot of the batch will recommend, they'll start working with an investor, and the investor will, ask them for introductions to the, other people in the batch. And so you have a lot of that happening as well.
Great. Very, very interesting. And about the things you were saying, I would like to ask about, what do you think about Latin America, the market here, the founders in Latin America? We are all from Latin America, all the countries in the region. And what do you think about the new valuations of the companies lately? It has changed. So what do you think about that?
We love funding Latin American companies. As we have, like, in the top companies list, there are now a number of the top companies list are all the YC companies that are currently valued at over 150 million. I think 150 million is our cutoff, and there are a good number of Latin American companies like on that list, and it's a really incredible market. And I think it's been one of the most like high growth markets that we've seen, at least since I've, joined YC. And so we have quite a few. And if you ever want to see all of the companies from your region, here, I'm going to put it in the chat. You can always go to ycombinator.com/companies, and you can look at like all the companies from here. Wait, let me see. Latin America. I'll put that specifically in there. And I think there's, I think it's an incredible market. I think there's a lot of opportunity. We've funded, it looks like 191 Latin American companies now. So in each country itself, there's a great community. Sorry, what was the other question?
The other question is about the new valuations, the new numbers of the valuations.
The valuations, I have to say, in this past batch, because I didn't know how the macroeconomic climate and the stock market and everything would impact valuations in this last batch. Like, I thought valuations might be lower. Like, you never know, because valuations in the end are like, we don't set the valuations. Like, we will help guide the companies on deciding like what valuations to start out with, but in the end the valuations are reflective of like what the market will pay, like what investors will actually pay for that company. And I'm a little bit like surprised by how high they were. Like a lot of the even like companies, international companies in Africa were raising at like a 30 million cap, like pretty early stage. So it's surprising to me. It seems like the macroeconomic climate has not yet hit early stage startup investing in terms of valuations or the amount raised. That's not to say that it'll be like this forever, especially if the world looks whether it's war or whatnot impacting the economy. It's hard to predict what it'll look like, but I will say the valuations are very high. It's I don't know how much longer. It's like it's so hard to say.
Yes, we ask this question to each other every day about our valuation, how we manage them. So
I will say that we always tell our founders not to optimize for high valuations. We're like, raise the money you need to work, at least at the seed stage, raise the money you need to work for the next 18 months to 2 years so that you can raise a good Series A. And once you raise the amount you need, shut down the process and move on. Like, don't worry about valuation too much. But yeah, I will say currently the valuations are a little crazy.
Yes. And especially when you raise a lot of money at the beginning, then you have to validate this valuation in the future. So maybe it's a tricky thing, but thank you for your advice. And I would like to know what happened after the batch. So we go into YC, we spend these 3 months with you, and after the batch, how do you interact with founders? How do you help them?
So our founders are welcome to book office hours with us into perpetuity. So we still do office hours with companies even Reddit, right? Which is in the very first batch of YC. It's like, we're still close to the Reddit founders, like Michael Seibel's on the Reddit board. It's, so founders will continue to meet with their group partners or other resources at YC for as long as they need it. And we say, one big change that's happened in the past few years is that YC's really started to build more programs for post-seed. So we have like a Series A program that helps our companies as they start to think about raising their Series A. We have an A to B program, which is another, a batch of startups that helps teach the best practices for companies that are starting to scale. And then we have a growth program for companies that are, really scaling from, say, 50 employees to 200 employees in the next 6 months to a year, and are looking at that like growth stage funding, era, like they're growing into that. So other than office hours and like usually founders will come back when they're starting to fundraise a new round for advice. But generally YC, one cool thing about YC is most of the people that work at YC are former founders. A lot of them are former YC founders. And so we're all building the programs that we wished and the resources that we wish had existed when we were first getting started. And so that's, and then, we've also built a lot of software on the back end to make it easy for our alumni to connect. So we have something called Bookface. It's like Facebook meets LinkedIn meets Quora, and all of our founders can, post questions. It's a forum. If you need an introduction to someone, you're looking to hire a growth person, you're having trouble with Stripe, whatever it is, like people will post and then founders will jump in and offer their help. So it's really cool to see all of the alumni come back and really help the future generations of founders. And then, we on Bookface, we have a founder directory and a deals page, and founders, of course, are welcome to use those things, for the entire lifetime of their companies. So, we see founders also just like, you build pretty strong connections with the people in your batch. And we often see founders self-organize, meetups or and we have something called Alumni Demo Day, which when we were in person, and hopefully eventually we'll be back in person in some respect, Alumni Demo Day was sort of like our twice a year reunion where alumni would get together and meet the new batch and see each other again. So there are a number of events, especially now that we're starting to go back in person in some ways that we do to keep the community together.
Great. And do you help companies to expand to other countries?
That's a lot of the companies, especially in Latin America, are, for example, Rappi started YC and they were just in Colombia at the time. I think they were going to be launching shortly into Mexico and Mexico City when they started YC. And so there's certainly, I think a lot of people in the community that helped advise them as they were going from, as they were starting to launch in new locations. And one cool thing about YC is that there always are going to be founders who are one step ahead of you in every vertical. So, if you are starting a delivery company in Latin America, you have the founders of Instacart or DoorDash who can kind of advise you and give you advice. And when you're in the early stages, companies don't feel like they're competitive with you. So you get a lot of help from, once you're at a certain stage, you start getting competitive. Say like in the US, Instacart and DoorDash are starting to get into the same spaces. They're not really sharing, as much information anymore. But like in the early stages, you see a lot of the teams help each other. And a lot of the later stage founders give advice to folks who are earlier in their space. So I think that's a cool thing about the program, is that there are people at all stages that you can reach out to for help.
Yes, sure. Well, we are finishing. I would like to know the rate of companies that close or that fail in the future. And then a final question. You are like a visionary, so what are the trendings that you are seeing now?
So so the first question was, repeat, what was the first question again?
the rate of companies that fail.
So at YC, and it's a little bit unfair because we've funded so many companies in the past few years, but at YC, if you I think it's like on average, it's like in the whole world, 1 out of 10 startups survives. But at YC, it looks like 70% of all the companies we've ever funded are still alive. And many, of course, are doing super well. We have 60 now that are valued at over $1 billion. We have about 260 that are valued at over 150 million. And we have many, many more that are even earlier stage that are, growing and will hit those numbers soon. So we have a very high rate of, survival and success. And then in terms of, in terms of what we're seeing, at least in the last batch of YC companies, I think the big trends, we still fund, I would say, like mostly, software B2B companies is probably the biggest tranche of companies that we fund. But one of the big changes over the course of the pandemic is that 50% of the companies we fund now are outside the US. So that's been a big trend over the past few years. Pre-pandemic, it was about 25 to 30% of the companies, and now it's closer to 50. And then in terms of we've seen a lot of, as I said, like Web3 crypto. In the last batch, we saw a lot of climate tech, like really smart founders who want to solve those problems, and healthcare. Healthcare has been a big, and I think that partially is, because of the pandemic, we saw a lot of gaps in the healthcare system and in, the healthcare offerings around the world. And a lot of really smart people have decided to focus their energy on solving those problems. So those are probably some of the bigger trends we've seen in the past year.
Great. Well, thank you very much. Please give us some advice because all of us will apply. I personally applied last batch and didn't success, but I will do it again now.
Yes, definitely.
We have a lot of interesting here, of course. But tell us a little final advice to us.
Yes, I would say I'm so delighted that you already have a community here of founders and YC alumni who can help you, give you feedback on your application, on your pitch. I would say, don't worry. As you said, what are the things like, what kind of startups do you want to fund? And it's the ones that, investors always want to fund startups that don't need you. So focus on the problem you're solving, talk to your customers, find the insights there, and then, reach out to the YC alumni network, especially the Latin American companies in YC have an incredible community and they're super helpful and they're always willing to help give feedback. And so I would reach out to them, and then you shoot me an email. I'm kat@ycombinator.com. I'm going to put my email in the chat. I might be, if you email me in the next week, I might be slow because we're reading applications right now. But you're always welcome to reach out to let me know you applied, and I'm happy to take a look at your application.
Great. Maybe we can put as a referral your name or a password, a key word, a secret word to let you know that we were in this call, learning and talking with you. I don't know if there is some other question or advice, but thank you very much. We are very happy to having you here.
Thank you.
All the founders want to be in YC Mafia or have part of this. So we will apply and we'll let you know.
All right. Thank you guys so much. It's good to meet you.